I'm often on the lookout for good deals on used bikes that I feel have a lot of potential to fit my style of riding. Many of these used bikes, however, have been neglected for years and need a good once-over to be any sort of fun to ride. In this video, I'll be showing the process I go through to refurbish a bike that hasn't been serviced in a while. Every bike will have slightly different needs depending on what their previous owner subjected them to, but I'll go through all the areas of the bike that could require attention in order of most to least important. This video won't be a full tear down and build up from a bare frame, though I did make a few of those videos if you want to see a more complete bike assembly. Those projects take a lot of time, not to mention money, especially if I'm replacing everything with brand new parts. That's not always necessary, especially when the bike is not in terrible condition to begin with. What I'll be doing here is making a few high-impact changes to get the bike riding much better. The model for this build will be this Bianchi boardwalk I recently picked up. Simple older hybrids like these are very common and won't cost very much on the second-hand market. There are a few reasons I think this bike is worth picking up and restoring. Let's quickly go over them. It doesn't have a super fancy frame, but is made out of decently lightweight aluminum with a chromoly steel fork. The wheels are decent quality and size 700C, which is the easiest size to find good tires for. The frame uses V-brakes, which are excellent, and also allow for many different widths of tires to be used. The 3x8 drivetrain has plenty of gear range for longer rides and riding in hilly areas. Lastly, the bike has fender and rack mounts, making it easy to set up for touring, commuting, gravel, or a wide variety of different cycling disciplines. This bike spent the last however many years in a dirty basement and was covered in dust and cobwebs. Cosmetic issues aside, it was in decent enough shape to be just about rideable as is. If possible, I always recommend riding a bike before making any huge changes to get a better idea of what you like and don't like about it. I gave it a few short spins before giving it a thorough cleaning and deciding what needed doing. Cleaning is the most important first step and makes a huge difference to how the bike will look and feel at the end. I'm not fussy about what I use to clean, just be careful if you use a degreaser not to get it on the bearing surfaces like the wheel hubs, the free hub, headset, and bottom bracket, unless you plan to repack them anyway. After cleaning, I always like to give frames a little bit of wax to really bring out the shine. It already looks a whole lot better cleaned up. Who could have guessed there was a derailleur under there? A clean bike makes it easier to see if there are any cracks or structural problems that need addressing. This one is in pretty good shape, though the one thing I know I'll need to change is the shifters. I don't know why this happens, but sometimes certain types of plastics turn into the consistency of melted gummy bears, which is what seems to be happening to the front shifter here. I don't much like twist shifters anyway, so they will be replaced, but we'll get to that point a little further down the road. I want to start with the component I always address first with every bike I work on. There is one that, in my opinion, has the highest impact on the ride quality of any bike. It is the only one that actually makes contact with the ground. The tires that this bike came with appear to be original ones from about 20 years ago. They were made by WTB and actually not that bad. They are sort of in-between size, confusingly labeled as 700 by 30/32. Bike tire sizing can be super frustrating, and I made a video complaining about it, linked above. The tires aren't particularly worn out, and I do feel like people replace their tires a little too soon. If I were on a shoestring budget, I can certainly reuse them, but they're a little stiff and narrower than I prefer for control and comfort, so I'm going to replace them with something nicer. I've got this set of WTB byway tires, which actually cost more than the entire complete bike, even though they're far from anything exotic. I was a little concerned about fitting such a wide tire at first. The last time I worked on a similar bike was this Jamis hybrid, and the frame there could not clear a 40mm wide tire. The Bianchi frame has a surprising amount of clearance, and these 44mm wide byways fit just fine with a little room to spare. These tires will make easy work of beat-up city streets and make it easy to take the bike off-road on some of the local trails in my area. Tires are going to make the biggest quality improvement once the bike is done, so it makes sense to splurge here a little bit. The next area of the bike I always like to address is the two main contact points, which are the grips and the saddle. The folks over at Ergon sent me some excellent options to test out for this bike. Most bikes I bought in the past come with grimy, torn-up grips or bar tape, and getting something clean and comfortable is always a priority. In this case, the bike does have some nice grips, also made by Ergon, but they are the short kind, intended to be used with twist shifters, so I'll be replacing them along with the shifters. I've had my eye on these beautiful cork grips for a while, and will finally get to try them out here. Besides being beautiful and comfortable to use because of the contours designed for the shape of the palm, they're also made out of 40% natural cork. Even though it's not a huge amount, I like the idea of using a little less plastic where possible. Saddle selection is a hugely personal choice, and some saddles that one person finds comfortable will feel like a medieval torture device for someone else. Stock saddles on most bikes are often very basic because riders are likely to swap them out for something more comfortable anyway. I've ridden a variety of different saddles over the years, and I'm still looking for the perfect synthetic saddle. For this build, I'll be trying out one of Ergon's mountain bike saddle options. This one is the SMC Sport Gel for men. It has a pressure relief cutout and has plenty of give without being too spongy. Hopefully this one is a keeper long term. I always try to add some fresh grease to any threaded part I'm servicing, like the seat post bolt here. Moving on along the bike, I want to evaluate the drivetrain. Many people like to set bikes like these up with a 1x setup, but I prefer the extended range I get from a double or a triple. Getting anywhere near the range of this triple crankset would require a huge cassette and a different derailleur, which to me is just not worth the trade-off. Replacing everything and setting up a totally fresh drivetrain would be nice, but there's no point in throwing out parts with plenty of life left. That is, if they have plenty of life left. The first thing to do is to check to see if the chain is stretched with a chain checker tool. The way my tool works is if I'm able to shove it into the chain, then it is worn past the tolerance printed on each side. In this case, neither side goes in all the way, so the chain is not yet ready for the recycle bin. If the chain is worn, it will quickly destroy the rear cogs and chain rings, which are more expensive than the chain to replace, which is why checking chain stretch and replacing worn out ones is very important. The cogs show only a little bit of light wear, and I'm not seeing the shark fin shape that is typical sign of worn chain rings and cassette cogs. I'll retain the gears and chain for the time being with just a light cleaning. The shifters will have to be replaced though. The original drivetrain is all SRAM, and I don't have many compatible components in my parts bin. I considered replacing the shifters and derailleurs with some Shimano parts I already have on hand, but the easier option I settled on was ordering a set of SRAM trigger shifters. With those in hand, I was finally ready to get these gross things off my handlebars. Trigger shifters need to be installed on the other side of the brake lever like so. The shifters came with new cables, which is good because the old ones are getting a little bit frayed and grimy. I took the opportunity to install new housing for them as well. Once the cables were installed, I took the bike out of the stand. It's helpful to have the bike on the ground to fine-tune the angles of the brake levers and the grips in a more natural position. This was all the work I decided to do for this bike, so let's check it out and go over some other considerations. First of all, I think it cleaned up very well. There are some scratches and cosmetic marks, but it's a bike meant to be ridden, not just hung on a wall and admired. It's kinda nasty outside in the Northeast right now, so I didn't get in a super long ride, but a quick diagnostic ride did feel good. The bike is reasonably light despite the wider tires, and the new grips and saddle have made it much more comfortable. In my opinion, the small changes I made were enough to get the bike riding how I want, but I do want to address some other areas of the bike that can require service on many used bikes. It's always a good idea to examine the brakes. This bike uses V-brakes, which are my favorite type of brake because they are cheap, strong, easy to set up, easy to maintain, and many other reasons. The brake shoes included here show absolutely no signs of wear, so there's no reason to replace them. Even though I replaced the gear cables, the brake cables are not showing any signs of friction, so I didn't replace them at this time either. The brake levers are perfectly fine as well, and I would only want to change them if I was swapping to drop bars and needed a different style of lever. Speaking of which, I do often change handlebars and stems around if I feel like there's a good reason to. I'm content with these riser bars because they are upright enough and fairly wide, which helps with control and handling. The stem is fine for now, but if I find myself wanting a more upright setup, I may swap it out to make small adjustments to my reach. The C-post matches the bars and I see no reason to replace it. The pedals are the only contact point I didn't replace, but I'm not super picky with my pedals. I only change them out if I expect to ride in my clipless shoes, which I only use on some of my bikes. Plastic pedals like these are a little less painful on the shins when you invariably slam against them. I kept the original wheels because they are decent quality and suit this bike well. I generally only replace wheels when they are broken, mismatched, or if I have a set on hand that suits the bike better. Lastly, it's worth examining the headset and bottom bracket bearings. They were both in very good shape on the Bianchi, so I didn't mess with them. Some bikes that have lived a harder life or were exposed to the elements a lot will show noticeable play or resistance in the bearings and will require repacking or replacement. That's it for this particular bike, but let me know if you agree with my assessment and decisions. Some used bikes would really benefit from a more thorough refurbishment than what I showed here, but it really depends on the bike. Thanks to Ergon for providing me with a couple of excellent components for this build, though all the opinions expressed here are my own. Check out my other build videos linked below. I've worked on a variety of different styles of builds. Leave a note in the comments if this video was useful, and thanks for watching.